Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome yet again to another episode of Dinner Guide. My name is Chef Andy, and today I'm going to be bringing a beautiful recipe to this kitchen. We're going to be doing a beautiful chicken kienyeji, or rather free-range chicken. We are going to be incorporating some beautiful modern ingredients to this classic dish, and I hope you're going to enjoy it. But without any further ado, I'll introduce the ingredients and then we'll jump right into it. So from my right, my furthest right, I've got some tomatoes and some spring onions there. I've got some white cabbage and some parboiled Kienyeji chicken. I also have some reserved stock from the chicken itself, so this is just some chicken stock. I also have some beautiful King Edward potatoes, a bit of turmeric powder, some beautiful coriander and some red bullet chilies. I also have a bit of red and yellow curry powder, a bit of stock cube, a bit of salt, a bit of minced ginger, and I also have some lemongrass, some garlic, some white onion, and some ketchup. So without further ado, I'm going to take a short break now, and I'm going to give you all a chance to grab your pens and papers if you're taking notes. And when we come back, we're going to dive right into it. So don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We took a short commercial break and now I'm about to show you how to make a very simple dish. We're going to be doing some Kienyeji chicken today, and this particular recipe is a bit of a twist of my own and a bit of a recipe that I learned from a great chef about a few years back. So I'm going to be using a very similarly referring recipe. Probably most of you would know about a sizzler chicken, which is a very common technique of making chicken in Kenya. It incorporates a bit of cabbage, a bit of chicken, and a bit of potatoes. But to that, I'm going to be giving it a twist with a bit of some curry flavor, some bit of lemongrass, and some garlic. And we're just going to basically just use those to really bring out the flavors and also just give it a bit of an appeal. So without further ado, we're just going to jump into it. So first things first, we're going to heat up the pot. And to this big pot, so this dish particularly is all going to be cooking in that same pot. So it's a very simple dish that you can actually cook in one pot. With some parboiled chicken, this should take you a little faster. But if you do have raw chicken, roadrunner chicken particularly, that's not cooked, I would recommend probably factor in about 2.5 hours extra to the time that it takes to prepare this one, because you will actually have to pre-boil it. So without further ado, we're just going to start off by adding a bit of oil to our pan. So I'm going to go with about 2.5 tablespoons. And very simply to that, I'm going to be going in with a bit of garlic. So I'm just going to slice that up. So just nice big chunky chunks. Remember, the garlic is actually going to be more visible than hidden, so it's also important for you to give it a bit of a size that can be seen actually. So we're going to start off with the garlic and go in with a bit of, so this is just fresh lemongrass. I'm going to be using the tips of the stem, and I'm also going to be cutting this bottom part of the stem of lemongrass into two. So this is basically to allow the flavors to really permeate into that oil. Gonna give that a mix. Then to that, we're also going to be adding in some white onion. But this particular cut, I'm actually just going to quarter them and take the tips off. So basically the root tip and the head tip. So I'm just going to throw them in as quarter chunks. And I'll do the same thing with the second piece. So as I said, take the root end off and the stem end off. Do the same thing for the other half. And this is just going to go straight into the pot. So we're frying this at medium to high heat. So basically this is just to really get the flavors permeating. I'm gonna drop the temperature just slightly. And basically very crucial with this particular recipe. It's always really crucial to actually be able to know how long a particular dish takes to cook. And I will be frank and tell you that you probably wouldn't be able to do it as fast as you would with broiler chicken. So particularly with Kienyeji chicken, which is still on the bone, it is necessary to pre-boil it because it does become tough. And what happens is if you try and fry it in a very short time and try and rush the process, all that's going to happen is you're going to get a very rubbery and tough piece of chicken. So remember, as I said, I'm just going to show you with the cuts that are in front here. So as you can see, I can actually be able to just peel off a piece of the chicken really easily. So it should actually be very well tender and cooked when you actually incorporate it into this particular recipe. Right, so to that I'm just going to add, so this is a whole chicken. This is about 1 kilo of Roadrunner chicken. So I'm just going to add that to the pan and turn up the heat a little bit. I'm just going to give that a quick mixture. And it's as simple as that. So to that, just to start really just bringing in the flavors together, I'm just going to add 1 whole cube of Thuo chicken cube. I'm also going to add just a bit of turmeric for color. So I'm only going to go in with about half a teaspoon. And then to that, we're going to just add a bit of chicken stock. So this is about 1.5 cups. So I'm just going to add half of it first. Give it a bit of time to heat up. Remember, particularly when you're making something more like a casserole or a stew with chunks of meat that have the bone, very crucial that you add your liquid in little by little, because what happens is you add too much in there, the mixture actually cooks and becomes really tasteless. But the moment you add a little bit at a time, you actually allow your flavors to really develop and mix into your chicken. I'm just going to give that a mix. Right, so we're just going to turn up the heat. So it's now going to be going at high heat, and to that we're also going to be incorporating a bit of some tomato and a bit of some spring onion. Right, so for the spring onion, very simple technique. I'm just going to cut it right in the middle like that, and then right through the stem to the end. And we're going to do the same with the other piece. And that's just going to go into the pot. And now for the tips of the stems that you have remaining. So remember, these are a bit more pungent and very good for just a general finish to your dish and for garnish. So I'm just going to cut those diagonally. And I'm just going to try and cut them as thin as possible. And those can go into your pot as well. And then always just remember to constantly just keep mixing. Remember, first of all, your liquid hasn't really covered your chicken all the way around. It is crucial that you keep tossing the chicken in that liquid just to make sure that it's actually just heating up as you continue. As I said, very particular to building a casserole. Add your liquid in parts. That allows you to actually get the flavors to get much more richer into the chicken and richer as your sauce builds. Now to that, I'm also going to be quartering these 2 large tomatoes. So these are just going to go in chunk size. And I'm going to take that edge off as well. And those are going to go in chunk size as well. So as I said, it's a casserole, definitely something, and as I mentioned earlier, definitely not a dish you want to rush into in the nick of time or maybe 1 hour just before dinner. Probably something you want to start off as early as maybe 1 o'clock by cooking up your chicken, cooking maybe for 2 hours. That should give you a nice 3 to 4 hour break to actually prepare everything else and get straight on with your dinner. So we're just going to allow that to continue cooking. And in the meantime, we're just going to quickly cut our potatoes And for that, I will need a nice big bowl. Always crucial that you have a bit of water before you start peeling your potatoes, just to make sure that your potatoes don't start to darken and show some black spots. Right, so if you can be able to see the view from home, as you can see, it's a nice chunky dish when you begin. But the beauty of how the tomatoes and everything else falls apart, it actually continues to cook down into a nice chunky stew. And it's definitely something that, if most of you remember grandma recipes, it wasn't about being very pure or very finely chopped. You had a bit of chunks here and there, and it actually made the meal worth enjoying. Right, so I'm just going to grab some water here. And very, very simply, we're just going to peel this quickly. So I'm just going to use a small spoon for that, and I'm just going to go around the potatoes. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a strip of the potato right around as I have, and we're just going to set those in the water, and I'll just repeat the same thing for the other pieces. Particularly for this, it doesn't really help anything much with the potatoes, but particularly just for appearance, a very, very healthy tool, something that most of you might actually want to pay attention to. And I personally like to do my potato wedges the same way. So all I do is just soak them in water just a little bit, take them out. And if you can see, the open side is right around the sides, but the skin side is at the top and at the bottom. I'm just going to put a knife right through the middle like that. And these are now ready just to add to our pot. So just cut them right through the top like that, and do the same thing for all three pieces. Now, particularly for this style of cutting potatoes, especially if you're thinking of making potato wedges, the beautiful thing is the skin does enhance a bit of flavor, but you do get a beautiful appearance, because remember, the skin won't color as fast as the potato flesh will. But actually, as it continues to cook, you will be able to see it once we are plating. It actually really, really gives a beautiful color. Remember, we had a bit of turmeric in there just to give it a bit of color. So when the potatoes come out, you might notice a bit of brown from the skins, but you will realize a nice, beautiful yellowing just right through to the end. So I'm just going to incorporate those into my pot here. And we're just going to put that water aside. And now, last but not least, I'm also going to add a bit of my ketchup. So I'm going to be using about 1.5 teaspoons of ketchup. And alternatively, you can also go with tomato paste. It doesn't really change anything. I just like ketchup because it's got that beautiful acidity and sweetness. And then last but not least, just a teaspoon there of a bit of yellow and a bit of red tomato paste. And all you want to do at this stage is to just give it one nice mix through. And always be sure to always get your spoon to go from the sides towards the center. Remember, that actually allows everything to actually mix really well without spilling. So just a nice mixture right through there. And all we are going to do now is add the rest of our chicken stock. So in there has been now about 1.5 cups. I normally like to go part water and part chicken stock, so I'm also going to add the same quantity of chicken stock and water. And simple as that, we're just going to add, so I'm basically doing 1 part stock to 1 part water. The beautiful thing about doing that is the water actually brings the temperature of the pot a little lower. It gets a bit of time to also infuse with the chicken and the stock that you put in earlier. And remember, as I said, very important when you're adding water, actually in the beginning stages, very crucial that you add it in small amounts so that you actually allow your spices and your herbs to actually fuse in with your food. And then lastly, just before you actually put this on the simmer, just put a nice big filling of water, and always try and make sure to try and get to the topmost level that you can reach. So you should actually just be able to push everything just over the surface. So it actually shouldn't come too high or too low. It should just actually just get to the tip of the surface. And what we're going to do now is we're just going to let that continue simmering. We're going to check on this after a short break, and you'll actually be able to see what the end result looks like. So I would normally leave that on the heat for about 20 to 30 minutes in a pressure cooker, but because we are using a regular pot, this is going to take a longer period, and we're going to take a break. But when you do come back, you'll actually be able to see what the result looks like. And we're just going to go straight into plating, and I'm just going to give you a few hints of how different ways you can plate it, and how to actually finish the dish. For that, I do have some cabbage on the side here, and some beautiful red chili peppers, and some coriander, which we're going to be adding just before the last part of the cooking. Remember, you do need to allow your potatoes to cook through, you need to allow your chicken to tenderize, and you need to let those juices really develop in there. Remember, the cabbage is really going to cook fast, so you basically want to add this last, just before this comes out of the pot. So we're going to give that a few minutes to continue. When we come back, I'm going to show you how we are going to cut the cabbage, and we're going to incorporate it in there, and then we're going to go straight to serving this beautiful dish. So please don't touch the dial. We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We took a break and we were just cooking down our chicken on the side here. We're just about coming to the end of the last particular step of finishing your chicken kienyeji. So we're just going to open that and just let that steam off a little bit. I'm just going to give that a quick mixture. Right, so if you can be able to see, I'm just going to show it to you from the cameras. If you can be able to actually see the spoon that I'm holding to my right, you should actually be able to almost peel the meat off the chicken legs of the chicken, and that's probably one of the best places to check. Particularly, it's important to check with the places that have got the darkest meat or the toughest meat, which is normally the legs. And this is particularly a very common checkpoint that I like to use every time I do this kienyeji recipe. But remember, we still haven't finished the dish. We're actually just going to finish this off now. So very, very simply, I'm just going to grab a bit of that outer skin of the bell pepper chili. All I'm going to do is just split that right through the middle. And then we're just going to roughly chop that. So that's going to go in there. So that's about 3/4 tablespoon of chili, but without the seeds. And now last but not least, the cabbage that we're going to be adding to the pot. So I'm just going to split that in half. We're going to reserve that bit. So very, very simple technique of how to cut cabbage for this particular recipe. So all you do is you're going to simply just run your knife almost diagonally just around the heart of the cabbage, and then all you're going to do is cut it right through, and what you actually achieve is you manage to take out the inside, and that's about it. And all you're going to do now is just slice it into big chunks like that. And then all we're going to do is arrange those right around the chicken. So as I said, very, very particular characteristic of very, very old techniques of cooking. They actually went with a lot of chunky, or rather not very finely chopped ingredients, for the reason that, first of all, a lot of the meals that were done by grandmas were basically just meals that didn't have a lot of effort. They were actually very effortless, but they were very creative in the fact that they were rich with ingredients, they were rich with flavor. And actually, the best part about eating from the farm, I do remember my childhood days. Every time I went to my grandma's for a meal, She never actually served anything that was a puree or very, or anything that had a very modern touch. Everything was always just filled with love, and you actually felt it even the moment you actually sat down to have a meal. A lot of meals were also communal, so this is probably one of the biggest characteristics as to why the food was much chunkier. It would make it a little easier to serve as well, and it was actually easier for a plate to go around easier, or rather to just dish out plates a little easier because everything was chunky. And now this is going to now continue for another few minutes. So we're just going to cover that up. Remember, this is still going on medium to high heat. So I'm just going to get rid of that cabbage and the seeds. And I'm just going to quickly change my knife. And to that, we are just going to add a bit of some chopped coriander. Very crucial that you actually take the leaves off and discard the stalks. But I always insist, if you always have a bit of some raw veggies or some herbs, a herb shoot that you have like this, you could always just reserve those and throw them in a boiling stock. Right, so I'm just going to go with about 3 tablespoons of the coriander, chopped of course. We're just going to press that onto the board. We're gonna let the knife run right through to the end. So very, very rough chop. Remember, the coriander is just basically to enhance a bit of appearance as well as flavor. So we're very simply just going to move that into the pot. I'm just going to use my spoon to spoon off everything that's remaining. And now we're just going to give that about 2 final mixes. Remember, the cabbage cooks really, really fast. And the essence of actually having the kienyeji done this way was basically to kind of allow you to really get a nice, beautiful difference in texture. It was basically just to give you a nice difference in texture with the meat, especially now that you have some soft, really well-cooked meat. You've got just that almost raw cabbage, but it's a little crispy. So this would actually be something that I would probably, or most times would probably be served just as it is. Remember, this would probably not need you to get an accompaniment because it's already rich. Remember, you got the potatoes, you got the cabbage in there. And this would actually really, really substitute for a one-pot dish in a span of a very, very long period of cooking. So now this is about done. Now particularly I like to take out the lemongrass. Remember, this was just to infuse the dish, so I like to always start by taking out those pieces. Remember, these are not edible, so it's always nicer to just take them out and save your kids or your family the effort of having to pick them out of their food. So I'm going to just use a tongue to get those out, and that's why we actually always throw them in a little bigger size, so it's actually easier to pick them out. Just a few pieces on the sides there. Right, and that beautiful kienyeji is now just beautifully aromatic, and you're really getting the flavors coming through. But very, very important, never forget to season your dish before it comes out of the heat. I'm just going to go with 2 pinches of salt, and last but not least, a bit of some black pepper. And we're just going to give that a quick mixer just to be able to get that salt to really dissolve right through the dish. And now this is ready to serve. We're just going to turn off the heat. And this is now beautiful and ready to serve. So we're just going to move that to a plate. So I'm particularly going to use a bowl of this kind, but I always insist, please always try and be creative with whenever you're trying to plate your dish. or trying to impress your family with the dishes that you create at home, I particularly like to serve it the easiest and best way to, because remember, you're going to be serving this directly as it is. It might not have an accompaniment, but this is a particularly beautiful technique of how to plate kienyeji like this one. So I'm first of all going to just go in with a spoon and just grab a bit of that cabbage and have that go in the bottom. And then I'm just going to place a few of those beautiful chicken pieces right on the top like that. So very, very, very simple dish, as I said. Probably not one of the dishes you want to make on a day that you don't have enough time. So I would say on a day that you're looking at maybe hosting some guests in a festive season, and you're really trying to really bring a bit of creativity and a bit of love and creativity to your dish, definitely not a bad option to go with. And now to that, I would probably just use a bit of those beautiful coriander leaves just to garnish. So I'm just going to grab a few of those, drop those right at the top. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is ready and easily done and said. This is now ready to serve. So it has been a pleasure showing you how to make the kienyeji chicken. I know you might probably have questions, and if you do, we do have a link that you can actually check out. Do check out our Facebook page. Leave your comments, your inquiries, any questions that you may have, and we'll be glad to get back to you. This particular dish, as I said, is a second dish to a 12-part series that we're going to be bringing around this festive season. So if you are looking for some tips to come up with, or some tips to just actually help you to get through preparing a nice, beautiful, and simple dish this season, this is definitely the show to watch. So I will insist, please don't miss out on the next show. We are going to be bringing you a lot of different inspirations from corners of Africa and Kenya. So do check out our links, check out our channels as well. Feel free to actually drop your comments. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you actually want to see, and maybe we might actually be able to create it just for you on this very show. So my name is Chef Andy. I have been your host today. It has been a pleasure showing you how to make this simple kienyeji dish, and I hope you've learned something today and you're ready to try it out on your own. But on my end, I am done now. I'm just about to go and have this for my dinner. I hope you're actually going to be having something similarly good today. But from my end, it has been a pleasure from the studios. Thank you very much for tuning in. Have a lovely Christmas season, and see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.